This is Read with Breathe. This is part 3 of Get Low by Darren Coleman. I'm reading chapters 5 through 7. So if you have not heard the first few chapters, then go back and listen to part 1 and 2. I'm just reading for fun, so everything will not be perfect and some words will be bleeped out, so I will not violate YouTube's terms of service. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on the video as well. Chapter 5, Bumping 'em. A week after Neek's funeral, I moved in with my mother and Dean. Even though I can barely stand to look at either of them, I was actually scared for my life. It didn't take much of a reason or excuse to get Brandy's mother to allow her to spend the rest of the summer with me in the suburbs. We were all broken up. Even though she routinely tested my nerves, I invited Shantae to come and spend a few days with me. Dean had purchased a home in the community of Lake Arbor out in Largo, Maryland. My mother, trying to reel me back into her life, continued to let me do whatever I wanted. I moved into a room in the basement that had a bathroom with a shower in it. As far as living arrangements went, it was perfect. A week after I moved in, Ali brought a guy over while my mother and Dean were at work. He disconnected the alarm sensor from the back door. I could tip out the back door without having to turn the alarm off. As long as I moved quietly, I could come and go without so much as a chime. My bouts of depression had everyone worried, but especially my man. Ali had tried to do everything in his power to make it up to me. He kept trying to buy me things, but one night, as we rode out to Baltimore Harbor, I told him plain out, I want Tony dead. Are you willing to kill him? He asked. Do you think you can pull the trigger if I brought him to you? I thought about the question. In my mind, I envisioned Ali pulling up with Tony in the trunk of a car and saying, Here he is. The thought sent my adrenaline racing through my body. I got excited. Then I blurted out, Yeah, I kill him, no doubt. I wouldn't want to get caught, though. But what if you did? Would it still be worth it to you? Would you do time if it meant you can take him out? I paused only for a minute. Yeah, I would. Would you do 20 years? You want his life that bad? Yeah, I said without hesitation. All right then, he said. Let's never talk about this again to nobody. Okay. I was content. Something in his voice told me that he was going to handle it. Shantae, Brandy, and I were sitting in the backyard, smoking blunt after blunt of chronic. It was a little after 12 on a sweltering August night. The only light was coming from inside of the pool where we all had our feet in the water. As I watched the ripples of water flowing from our feet, I noticed our three reflections. There were supposed to be four. I still can't believe she's gone, I said. She's going to a better place, Shantae said. You believe that? Brandy asked. I guess. I don't, I said. What could be better than her here with her girls? She was only 16. I coughed and passed the weed to Shantae. Yeah, you got a point, Shantae said. I love y'all, but you know Neek was like my sister. She was more than a best friend. We know, it's cool, but that don't stop us from being here from you, Brandy said. When Shantae passed her weed, she took a nice drag and asked, You know something? What? She looked into my face and smiled. Never mind. What bitch? She shook her head no and repeated herself. Never mind. I'll tell you later, maybe. You's a silly ass chick, I shot back. I second that, Shantae said. Love this. That water looks too good. Before I knew it, she stood up and pulled her t-shirt off and stripped down to her panties and jumped into the pool. Don't drown with your high, Zay, Brandy cried out. Shantae was actually a good swimmer. She had been swimming every chance she had since coming to my house. It was like she was on a mission. I had noticed how tight her body was getting. Her breasts were like a little smaller than mine, but shaped like two perfect softballs. She had a bubble butt, and her hips were a little wider than mine. I watched as she swam like a fish up to the other end of the pool and back. When she made it back to the deep end where we were seated at, she climbed out and took her spot next to me again, seated out as if we were on a topless beach. I see someone's mighty proud, Brandy said. Well, I ain't ashamed, she slashed back. Oh, I ain't either, Brandy returned and was greeted with a smirk and a laugh from Shantae. Okay, bitch. Then Pocahontas stood up and stripped completely naked. She gave a twirl. It was the first time I had seen her naked, and I was surprised that she had done that. She dove in and shocked the hell out of us. As she swam, I couldn't get the image that I had just seen out of my head. Brandy's neck looked like a razor's. She had a body like a model to match her face. I was hoping that my mother Nordine got up for a late night snack and happened to take a peep outside. I continued smoking until I was completely smashed, and then I was too afraid to get into the water. I kept imagining that Jaws was going to somehow appear in the pool and chomp the shit out of us. An hour later, Shantae had fallen into a deep sleep on my bed, snoring like an old man. Still high as hell, I showered and then went out to the recreational room to watch TV as I dried off and put on lotion. Brandy showered after me and came out to join me while I sat watching Roseanne on Nick at Night. It's bad for your eyes watching TV in the dark like that, Brandy said. I know, but I do it all the time. I was just going to do it long enough to put on some lotion, but I haven't been able to move. I smiled and added, I'm too high. Brandy reached for the lotion and said, Put your leg here. She squeezed a handful of Jergens and started to rub it onto my leg. Instantly, she released the tension in my calf muscles that I didn't even know I had. That feels good, girl. She stood up and dropped the towel that she had and spread it on the floor. Lay on this and I'll hook you up with a massage while I do this. She didn't have to ask me twice. I lay flat on my belly and she went to work, rubbing on my calves and thighs. It felt so good that I think I began to drift off. She moved up to my shoulders and kneaded them with her fingers and knuckles. When she reached my lower back, I think I drifted off for a few seconds. Next, she startled me when her lotion-filled hands landed on my ass. Then she said, I know this feels good. I love when I get a massage on my cheeks. You get so much tension there that needs to be released. You feel it? I did. It felt great. She used two hands at a time on each side. It was incredible, the amount of tension and relief that she was now using to relieve me of my senses. I truly didn't care that one of my best friends was now rubbing on my derriere. I allowed myself to focus solely on the pleasure until she crossed the line and let one of her fingers slide down and brush against my pussy. I jumped and said, What the fuck are you doing? I'm sorry, she said. That was an accident. I locked eyes with her. Was it really? She didn't answer. I stared at her and asked her flat out, Brandy, are you gay? She was quiet for a second and said, No, I'm not, but I do. But what? Either you are or you aren't. It's not that simple. I get turned on by boys and girls. Sometimes when I see a sexy woman on TV or beautiful strangers, I sometimes feel something stirring deep down inside that I really can't explain. I usually can control it, but with you and seeing you all the time, it drives me crazy, she answered. Truthfully, I don't even think I'm gay because I'm really attracted to men, but there's something about you. I didn't know what to say. It was weird as hell for me to hear it. How long have you felt like that? I don't know, maybe the last couple of years, but please don't let it freak you out. I still love you like a sister. I smirked. A sister whose piece you want to plunge your fingers into? It's just that I've had a fantasy about being with you. Out. I don't know why, but I have. I'm sorry. I hope that I was stunned, but my mind raced at 1,000 miles an hour as I stared at her naked body, fully erect, her flawless skin and beautiful face. Something came over me, and I said, "Hey, up." I leaned back on my elbows and spread my legs. Go ahead, but I'm not doing you back. I couldn't believe I had said it. Her face showed disbelief. I tapped my wrist and he said, Hurry up before I change my mind. As if someone had shot off a starter pistol. She moved in like a tiger and began licking my piece from the bottom to the top. The warmth of her tongue caught me off guard as she did her delicate touch. Until that moment, I believed that Ali had mastered my body in every facet of success, leaving no room for improvement. As Brandy used her tongue to launch me into the stratosphere, I lost all regard for the boundaries of what I believed was right or wrong. How could having one of my best friends eat me be wrong when it felt so good? Her saliva and my juices were combining to form a small stream that was falling out of me. It surprised me that Brandy knew exactly where to lick, and she gave my sensory overload. Brandy was tickling my love button so that I thought my head was going to pop off. As the connection of her lips and tongue built me up to the point where my stomach muscles grew tight, she was in complete control. I was breathing heavily, trying not to yell out.
I reached for the towel that was nearby and covered my face before I screamed loud enough to wake the dead. She was giving me the sweetest torture I have ever experienced. Instead of letting me go over the top right there, she slowed down her tongue thrashing enough to bring her fingers into the act. She used three of them to massage my feet from the inside. There were spots inside of me that she found that sent bolts of electricity up my spine. I began to shiver from the pleasure. My clit felt as big as a marshmallow, and my pussy was now wet and wide enough for two skid. Brandy obviously knew this, and without warning, she shoved her entire fist in my mouth. Hey! I yelled out as the sparks turned into an explosion. Her mouth was on my belly, like a soldier jumping on a grenade to save his comrade. She locked her mouth onto my mound and rolled my pussy through a Bronco-style, body-bucking orgasm. I arched my back as I shook as if I was having a seizure. My climax was hard, fast, and more intense than anything I've ever felt. When I finished, I couldn't move. While I was trying to catch my breath, she spun around, lifted my legs over hers, and the next thing I knew, she had her heel pressed against mine, grinding as if her life depended on it. It felt okay, but I wasn't too spent to do anything to help her along. I didn't need to. 30 seconds later, Brandy let out a series of small screams. I'm coming, Nia, she groaned. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when Shantae woke us up. Ain't y'all just cute? We had fallen asleep on the floor together, naked, like old lovers. Get y'all gay asses up, she laughed, not having a clue that she was actually on to something. I sat up and looked at Brandy, who hadn't moved. Damn, what time is it? 9. But if we're going to get our hair done, we need to be at Rana's shop by 10. We got up, dressed, and headed out. Brandy and I hardly said a word to one another the entire day. I didn't want to tell her how good she had made me feel. I was a little ashamed that I had enjoyed it so much. I was concerned that we would have sexual tension between us. Most of all, I was worried that when she came for more, I wouldn't be able to say no. Chapter 6. Just Drifting. A week after the school year started, I was walking out of Foot Locker in Union Station and I actually bumped right into him. It was strange because the second I saw his eyes, I felt Nick's presence. Ivan, hey. Hey, Nia. He hugged me. I looked down at the little girl holding his hand. Her caramel complexion and wide mouth had me thinking she was his seed. Who's the munchkin? I asked. This is my niece, Damani. She's cute. How old is she? He looked down and said, Tell Nia how old you are. She held up two fingers and said, Free? Ivan and I both laughed. She just turned 3. We are going to have to work on getting the right amount of fingers up. I'm about to pick her up a pair of shoes. That's nice. I hadn't seen him since Nick's funeral, and I think we both had a lot to say but didn't know where to start. I knew that he really cared about her. He was her first and only, but his best friend had killed her, and now here we are, both trying not to talk about it. So how did your college tour go? It was going good until the whole thing that happened. He paused. You know, with Neek, with her murder. I helped him. His expression went ice cold. Yeah, his voice cracked. Well, I know she would want you to press on with that. She was really proud of all the things you were doing. He nodded. There was an awkward silence. I can tell he wanted to say something, but he held back. I couldn't take it any longer, so I said, Hey, look, I'm gonna let you run and catch up with you. Yeah, okay, he shot back. I began to walk off and he called me. Hey, Nia. Yeah, what's up? I turned back to see his eyes looking as if they were about to tear up. He looked as if he was fighting back some emotion. Nia, if you ever want to talk, he cleared his throat. We should stay in touch. I paused and thought about his words, trying to decide whether or not I secretly hated him for even knowing Tony. As clearly as I can see him in front of me, I knew that he was good. For that reason alone, I couldn't hate him, even though a part of me did blame him. I reached in my purse and pulled out a pen and a piece of paper. That'll be cool. And you can call me if you ever need to talk. I know you're hurting too, more than anybody knows, he said, and he stared into my eyes. I understand, I said softly and sped off my way. A week after seeing him in the mall, Ivan called me, but caught me in the middle of one of my routine sections with Ali. Needless to say, I didn't answer the phone and he didn't call back. Once school started, I spent nearly every free moment I had with Ali. or I was back in the city hanging with Brandy and Shantae. Every time I thought about reaching out to Ivan, something came up, and it turned out that I never got around to calling him back. Ali had a voracious sexual appetite that hadn't begun to let up. All he did was play the streets all day and keep me on my back all night long. It had been 4 months, and his interest in me was stronger than ever. In fact, I was beginning to believe that he was in love with me. After Tony had shot the Acura up, he had taken it back out to the dealer and traded it in for a black BMW 325i. He said that he didn't want to take any chances on Tony knowing what I was driving. Even though Tony had been out of sight for a couple of months, I had a feeling that it was only a matter of time before Ali would catch up with them. My rage had not subsided after that. I wanted Tony to die, or at least to do 100 years for what he did to Neek. Being out in the suburbs had kept me away from some of the action that I've grown up around and began to wonder if I needed to make some new friends at my new school. Brandy's role in my life had changed. Twice after the encounter, I allowed her to go down on me after getting high. Slowly, I began to lose some of what I felt for her as a friend and started to look to her as simply as a sex toy. Only for the fact that one, we had a long history together, and two, Shantae was in the dark about our sexual involvement, did I still try to keep a sense of normalcy. The truth of the matter was, I was ashamed of what we'd done, and I stopped wanting to be around Brandy as much. If it wasn't for the fact that she gave me such intense orgasms, I might have started to avoid her. I was now going to Largo High School, which was a change of pace from the schools in the city. Maryland, specifically PG County, was like an extension of the District of Columbia. Yet the schools, like the neighborhoods, were like night and day. Anacostia, where I attended my freshman and sophomore years, was 60 years old at the time. Like so many of the schools in the city, Anacostia High was at the mercy of a city council that couldn't seem to find a way to take care of the serious work that it needed. Largo, which was an air-conditioned building with spotless halls full of happy, well-to-do black kids, seemed more like a college facility to me. I quickly adapted to the relaxed atmosphere there, and the fact that without even trying, I had become a celebrity in the school. The fact that I wore the flyest clothes and was blessed with both a pretty face and a banging body made me stand out, even amongst the spoiled rich kids that attended Largo. This was saying a lot because since the early 80s, Largo had been known as a school that housed Prince George's County's cutest girls. It also amazed me that some of the students had heard about me fighting and taking out two niggas in the club over the summer. I would have never figured out how the word had traveled like that until the day I saw a familiar looking fat guy with a patch on his eye walking out of the cafeteria. My heart began to race as I recognized him as the one who I had smashed in the eye with the glass. He looked right in my face with his one good eye, and I knew that he had recognized me. He started towards me, and I took off running for the side exit. I didn't stop until I reached the student parking lot, but panicked when I didn't see my car. Then I realized that I had been looking in the section where I parked the day before. I then turned and sprinted to my car, squeezing the alarm as soon as I was within 30 feet. I climbed in and started the car and yanked it into reverse only to slam on the brakes when an army green station wagon pulled up behind my car, blocking me in. My fears were confirmed when the patched-eyed driver emerged and walked up to my window. I looked around and my heart sank when I realized that there wasn't a soul within 100 yards. I cracked my window. Leave me the fuck alone. My boyfriend will kill you if you do anything to me. Nia, I'm not going to do anything to you. Well, move your fucking car. I want to leave. I can't do that. Not until you hear me out. My heart was beating. What do you want? Listen, I know you were at the school for the past month. One of my boys pointed you out because he was checking you out. A day later, he told me who you were. Everybody knows you're the new chick from the city. So what? He was calm and surprisingly comforting as he spoke. I just want you to know that I don't have beef with you. I don't want to be involved in whatever you got going on with you and Tony. Yeah, okay, whatever you say. Can you move your car, please? He shook his head and a distressed look was on his face. You don't believe me, but I want to show you something. He walked to his car and brought back his notebook. He opened it and pulled out 6 pieces of paper.
I scanned over the letterhead and saw the names of prominent schools like Florida State, Penn State, and Virginia Tech across the tops of the first few. All these letters are from colleges for me to play football. See, I started for the varsity team here and made all met last year in the 10th grade. I have a chance to go to college and hopefully the NFL, but I can't play this year because of the glass you hit me with. The doctor said that 1 centimeter lower and I would have lost my eye. Luckily for me, it'll heal completely over the next 5 months, they said. Well, you should have been. He cut me off. Nia, I know. You were protecting your family, and I understand that now. But I was protecting mine. Tony is my cousin. When he said that, a chill ran down my spine. But that nigga's a hothead, and fooling with him I almost lost my entire future. Plus, he had no reason to start that fight. He reached for his letters. I haven't heard from him since that fight. He didn't call to ask if I was okay, say my bad, or nothing. So fuck him as far as I'm concerned. I hear that the police are looking for him. My parents just don't want me near him, and now I see why. Just because somebody has the same blood as you don't make them family. So I want you to know that I'm not into all this beefing. I was silent as I listened to what he had to say. He finished with, I just wanted to let you know that so you don't have to feel all uneasy here at the school. And from the way things went down at the club, hopefully, I won't have to feel uneasy myself. Plus, I heard about my guy Ali, and I don't want to have nothing to be looking over my shoulder for. He was referring to Ali's rep as a killer. I don't even know your name. Sheldon Parker. Well, Sheldon, it's all good. As long as you don't beef with me, I won't beef with you or tell Ali a thing. I'm just trying to go to school and get my education. He smiled as if he was more relieved than I was. So, what position you play? Defensive end. I nodded. Well, sorry about your eye, too. He nodded back and the conversation ended. He pulled off and I did the same after looking at the clock. Still a little drained from the whole rush, I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out some smoke to light up as I set off to ride to clear my head. I wasn't in the mood for Ali's intensity right then, and I knew if I called him, he had me in a hotel within an hour. I hit the Beltway and headed south until I reached Indian Head Highway. I tossed the weed out of the window as I headed on to Old Fort Road. I pulled into the parking lot of Friendly High School as the half-day students were preparing to leave school. I circled the lot looking for my cousin Harold. I was going to see if he wanted to catch a movie and hang out. Seven, starring Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, had just came out and I wanted to check it out. As I drove around for the third time looking for my aunt's Nissan, I saw none other than the Marcus walking through the parking lot. I pulled up on him and the girl he was talking to. I looked her up and down, deciding that she was all right if he liked tackheads. I frowned at her lack of fashion sense and wondered what she was doing with a honey like my DeMarcus. Hey, stranger, I said as I slid my window down. He hadn't seen me in the BMW, but when he recognized me, the look in his eyes gave away his feelings. Hey, Nia, what are you doing here? The girl was staring, so I decided to crush her. I climbed out of the car, revealing the painted on Parasuco jeans I was wearing and the Berserk hugging Arden B t-shirt. I gave him a hug, pressing my fluffy Berserk into his chest. I was looking for Harold. Have you seen him? Harold hasn't been to school since Wednesday. He's sick. That's why I'm getting a ride home, my friend Carmen. Oh, well, I'll give you a ride. I've been wanting to catch up with you anyways. He looked nervous, but it was a no-brainer. Carmen already missed her lunch to Rummy. Well, now she don't have to. Come on. He looked over at Carmen, who hadn't said a word. She stood there looking like an assistant librarian or the math club president. Carmen, I'm gonna go ahead. He didn't finish before she turned and stormed off. I got into the car and he walked around to the other side. When he sat down, he had a stupid look on his face. I pulled off. I know you aren't messing with that geeky chick, Marcus. Hell no, he said, but she's a friend. I've known her for years. Yeah, well, that bitch desperately wants some dick from you, I laughed. He shook his head as he smiled, trying to look comfortable. So, is something wrong? No, it's just that you seem like you've changed. I mean, you popping up in different whips. I smell the weed on you. And I don't want to go into the last time we saw each other. He looked me up and down and then added, for real, I should be asking you if there's anything wrong with you. We pulled out into the main highway and I asked, it's a sunny Friday. What do you have planned for the rest of the day? He shrugged his shoulders. Nothing really. I was just going to check on Harold, maybe hit the skating rink tonight. Well, I've got plans for the day.
I've never got to thank you for what you did that night. You don't have to, but I'm going to. I said as I blasted my favorite escape tune, Who Can I Run To? And I pushed the gas pedal, taking the car to over 80 miles an hour. Let's start with the movie. Some popcorn. I reached and grabbed his it before adding, and maybe a hot dog. I laughed even though he looked embarrassed. I could tell that DeMarcus' mind was being blown. He wanted to see Seven as well, but we both have to see it a second time if we were going to figure out what was going on in the movie. 20 minutes into the movie, and I had his it in my hand stroking it. Though this was the premiere date, it didn't matter because we come to a 1 o'clock show while mostly everyone was still at work. There was only 10 other people in the theater, and we had the back 4 rows to ourselves. We taken a corner at my direction, and now he understood why. I didn't plan to tease him for long. In fact, I visualized my assault on him the entire ride to Waldorf. Now I was well into the second phase as I leaned over and took his dick into my mouth. It was warm and smooth, and I wanted to hit him off with some head that he'd never forget. I started sucking the tip as I let excess saliva drip from my mouth, coating his shaft as I began to jerk it with my hand. Oh, he groaned out. His movements were erratic, as if he was fighting to keep control. This was different from Ali, who always maintained control over himself and me. Inside, I was filled with pride as I felt my control over DeMarcus increasing with each suck and stroke of my hand. Mmm, I purred as I continued on tickling his meat with my tonsils. I felt tremors in him. Ali had taught me how to suck him off to perfection, and now what I was doing to DeMarcus wasn't even fair. I shifted gears and I started jerking his soaked dick with my right hand. Ish, he cried out, and I felt him begin to pulsate. I pulled my mouth away just in time as it began to squirt gobs of sticky nemach to the air. I kept jerking and he whined like a bitch. Ah, ah, until he couldn't take another touch and pulled away. I handed him napkins as he breathed heavily for a full minute more. As we watched the gore on the screen for the next 20 minutes, he kept an inappropriately bright smile on his face. It was funny because as people were suffering dismemberment and bloody torture on the screen, he looked like a 7-year-old watching an episode of Bernie. Once the glassy look wore off and he came out of the blowjob-induced haze he was in, I reached for his hand and stuck it into my panties. I guided him as I showed him how to massage my ill. Giving him long enough to recover, I reached for his it and found it hard once again. Turned on by the fact that we were just getting so freaky in the back of the theater, I couldn't take it anymore. Before I came, I slid my jeans and panties off of one leg and told him to slide down a bit into the seat. Nowhere near Ali's size, he felt perfect as I impaled myself onto him and began to bounce slowly up and down on him. Knowing that we wouldn't have forever, I began to grind on his lap and started to rub my pussy ferociously. "Come on, boy, cuff me," I said in a seductive whisper. "Oh yeah, Nia, work that D, work it." He was mussing me as best he could, and it was plenty good enough. My Zilty was waterfall central, and I knew that if I could see his dick in the darkness, it would be a creamy mess. We scuffed in a steady rhythm until I felt the familiar tingle. I screamed out. People surely heard us. He quickly covered my mouth, but as my climax sent me into a zone, I bit down on his fingers and I knew it all over his head. I was still painting as the beam from the flashlight hit us. The ushers were standing there along with the manager. We were caught and we were escorted out of the theater. Once we were back out into the sunlight, I nearly collapsed on the floor laughing. While DeMarcus tried to steady himself from the embarrassment, I learned something about myself. I simply didn't give a f.
Chapter 7. Hot Rocks. I couldn't stop laughing at DeMarcus. He can barely walk after we rode the shockwave at King Dominion. "I told you I don't like roller coasters," he said as he held onto the fence, trying to steady himself. "I know you don't think this is funny," he said. Even though his face didn't look good, I had never seen anyone who couldn't handle a roller coaster. So when he vomited over the rail, I was in shock. I got him some water, and we started towards the front gate to make our exit. "Do you want me to see if I can borrow a wheelbarrow?" I joked. "Real funny," he shot back. "I'm gonna get your ass back when we get home," he threatened.
By the time we made it to my car, he seemed as though he was feeling much better. We stopped at the Tiger Mart and he bought some pills for motion sickness. I hope he wouldn't let the vomit-filled ending ruin the incredible day that we had had. We had ridden the water rides, played a ton of games, and even made a video lip syncing to Biggie's One More Chance. After being thrown out of the movies a week earlier, I had come up with one excuse after the other for Ali so that I can continue spending all of my free time with DeMarcus. I lied to Ali and told him that I was being tutored and trying out for cheerleading. He was always so busy in the streets that he didn't pay it much attention. As long as he can squeeze in a late night booty call, he was fine for the time being. It was strange because I miss Ali, and I definitely didn't want to lose him. But what I was doing with DeMarcus felt fulfilling in a deeper way. It was as if I was completing some sort of unfulfilled mission. He had been my first, and yet I had never had a chance to date him. We never sat on the phone all night, wrote love letters, or even snuck off together. It was a lot like I was suddenly granted a chance to relive a lost moment. I've always heard that a woman falls in love with her first, I guess because of the trauma I faced that day. I've been immune to the love bug. Even now, I couldn't deny feeling something special for him, but somewhere the equation had gotten screwed up. As DeMarcus and I humped like rabbits in his basement, he said the words, I love you. In the afterglow, I sat quiet, wondering if he was going to start in with it. It didn't take a minute. Nia, he said, I'm in love with you. I smiled, and then I covered my mouth. What makes you think that? I've never felt like this. I can't stop thinking about you. In school, all day, at night, I want to be with you every minute. I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't even want to look at another girl. Wow. That's all you have to say? You don't feel the same way? I didn't want to lie. DeMarcus, you know that I have a boyfriend, right? Well, you must not care about him very much. Why else would you be over here with me? On a real? How can you even call him that when you've been having nonstop sex with me? I didn't want to tell him plainly that I love sex, so I just said, it's complicated. Well, I want you to break up with him. I paused for a second. DeMarcus, where do you think I get all the money to do the stuff that we do? He keeps the gas in the car that he bought me, and he buys me all these clothes. He paid for our trip to King Dominion. I don't care. We don't need that stuff. I'll get a job, he said desperately. Listen, we'll talk about this tomorrow, I answered. My phone had been ringing off the hook for the past hour and a half. So are you going to be with me now? DeMarcus, don't start. I want to know. I'll call you in the morning. I could see the anger in his eyes. He grabbed my keys and stood up. You're not leaving. I calmly put my clothes on and stood up. DeMarcus, if you don't hand me my keys, you'll never see me or hear from me again. I wanted to see what he was made of. It actually let me down when he handed me the keys. He was pleased whipped. I hugged him and left. Bitch, where the fuck you been all day? Shantae asked. I was hanging out with Harold and my family, I replied. Well, your boy been driving around here every hour looking for you. Who? Tony's ass. I think he's over his boy's house across the way. How you know he was looking for me? Well, for one, he got me walking by myself back from the Exxon station and rode up on me. When I saw it was him, I almost pissed on myself. Then he asked me about you. Of course, I told him that me and you don't hang out no more since you moved, but I don't think he bought it. He asked me about the Acura. Then about an hour after that, I saw the car that he was in come rolling through the parking lot. I just walked out of the dumpster to take some trash out, and I saw the car again. Listen, I'm going to tell Ali that I've been with you today and that we saw Tony. I want you to keep a lookout, and I'm going to call you back in a minute. In 5 minutes, I was crossing the southeast line. I pulled over and dialed Ali's phone number. On the first ring, he answered. Nia, where the fuck you been? I've been calling you all day. He sounded angry as hell. I was with Shantae. Well, why the fuck you ain't answer the phone? You playing games. Listen, baby, I had left the phone in my car because we saw Tony and ran the house. I didn't have time to get it. His tone changed instantly from anger to heightened alert. You saw him where? He came around the neighborhood, but he didn't recognize my car. Once he pulled off, I ran from the car and left. But Shantae told me that he came back and that he's still over there. I think he's at his boy's house. What kind of car is he in? Sure shit, I thought. I had forgotten to ask Shantae. Immediately, I faked a bad connection and hung up on him. I called Shantae and got the info I needed.
I redialed Ali, and when he picked up, I asked, "Can you hear me now? I heard you the whole time. Must have been your phone." "So what was he driving?" "A silver Caprice Classic. He might not be in it, but he's parked by the dumpster near building 7417. "All right. So what you want to do?" I could no longer hear any response. "Hello?" He hung up without saying goodbye. I wasn't sure why, but I continued on towards the scene of the impending crime. I knew I should have been scared, but I was more excited than anything. I would never admit to anyone, but the thought of seeing violence was strangely become a turn on to me. I pulled over and parked on Fort Davis Street and called Shantae, letting her know that I was here. 5 minutes later, I saw Ali drive past me in a burgundy Cherokee with one of his friends. They circled the block and came back a second time. He was so focused on catching Tony that he never noticed my car. On their second time around, they pulled into the parking lot and Ali's friend got out of the truck first. I noticed that he was dressed in all black. It was just after dark and the block was extremely quiet for a Saturday night. I looked up at the sky and noticed a full moon. A perfect night for a murder, I thought. My heart was now pumping twice as fast as normal. I couldn't believe that I had just ordered a hit on Tony. I felt like the queen of a crime family as I watched the scene unfold. Ali's friend investigated the car, crouching the whole time. It must have been empty because he stepped away for a second. Next, I watched Ali run over and with something wrapped in his hand, he smashed the window out of the car, yanking the door open, and then the two of them began rifling through the car like police searching for drugs. They took their time and then they ran back to the Cherokee. My nerves were starting to get the best of me as I wondered what they were doing. I decided to reach for the bag of weed I had in my console. I wanted to smoke just enough to calm my nerves. A moment later, I was blowing smoke out of my moonroof, relieving myself of all tension. I sat there for a good while until I started to get anxious all over again. I called Shantae. When she didn't answer, I dialed Brandy's number. "What's up, girl?" "Nothing. What are you doing?" "I was just thinking about you. Are you coming to get me?" "Yeah, we can hang out. As a matter of fact, I'm around the corner from you now." "Yeah, well, be careful. Tony's ass been around here lately. Speak of the devil and the devil appears." I dropped the phone as I heard the unmistakable sound of pistols popping off. I looked over, but I didn't see where the shots were coming from. But they seemed to go on and on for at least a minute. I wanted desperately to go and investigate, but I didn't want to walk into the middle of shots being fired. Crack, 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 crack. Another series of shots rang out, and then my heart stopped when I saw two police cars turn into the complex. I climbed out of the car and started towards the courtyard. Just then, I saw Ali and his friend running towards his truck, but they were being followed by a police officer playing super cop. Ali's friend reached into the other side of the truck and started shooting at the officer. I ran back to my car as fast as my feet would carry me. I heard a man moan out, and I looked back to see Ali's friend go down. Ali took off running down Fort Davis Street and headed towards W Street. I started my car and drove after him. I hit my horn, and he looked back at me in total shock. I slammed on the brake, and he ran to my car. "Get the fuck out of here," he huffed out. He was sweating and trying to catch his breath. "We also got to get rid of this." He had a gun in his hand. He directed me left, right, and left again. When we were way clear of the scene, he had me pull into Anacostia Park. He ran over to the water and tossed the gun. "I'ma drive now," he said. He seemed much more calm. Then he said loud and proud, "I lit your boy up." He didn't ask anything, but he went on. "I give it to the little bitch. He put up a fight. He was ready for war, but he wasn't no match for your man. This nigga had a fucking bulletproof vest on." Then, as if he just remembered, "I can't believe the police shot my man Kurt. Kurt is the dumbest fucking soldier. I hope he—" I interrupted. "There was a lot of shots fired." "Yeah, he almost had us cornered. It was like he knew we were coming for him." "Maybe he did, but it wasn't enough. I dumped 5 in his face. Kurt hit him a couple times in his chest before he knew he had a vest on. This is going to be all over the news. Just wait." I threw a half ounce of coke on him, just to make it look like it was drug related. "They barely investigate those murders because we shot that bitch and the other dude. It's going to be big news." "What bitch?" I asked. "When we rolled up on him, he was all hugged up on some chick, or at least pretending to be. For a second, I thought it was you from the back, but once we were close enough to bust off, he pushed her to the ground and started blasting. She tried to run off, but I clapped her in the back at least twice, I know."
By the time we pulled up to his apartment complex off Glenwood Road in Hatesville, my phone was ringing. We got out to head inside as I answered. I figured Brandy was going to start asking where I was and what was taking so long. Instead, when I picked up the phone, she was screaming and crying hysterically as she kept repeating my name. Nia! Oh my God, Nia, Nia! Calm down, I can't hear you, I begged as I stopped in my tracks. I had an eerie feeling, almost predicting what she would say next. Shantae's been shot.